Mom, we've discussed this. It's just not safe for you to be here alone anymore. The market for the house is excellent right now. We really should finalize the sale.
When I came home from my doctor's appointment, my living room looked as if someone had erased my life. My wedding photographs, Thomas's letters, the quilt my mother made, and 43 years of memories had been stuffed into cardboard boxes. My son Michael stood beside them, holding a brochure for assisted living. "You can't stay here alone anymore, Mom," he said. I had never agreed to move. As Michael and Lauren discussed selling my house as though I were not in the room, I opened Thomas's old cedar chest. Beneath its torn lining, my fingers touched a small blue diary. Michael had packed everything else, but he had missed the one thing my husband had hidden to protect me. Before I tell you what Thomas wrote, please like and subscribe. If you believe growing older should never mean losing your voice, tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I had lived in that house in Fairview, Ohio for 43 years. Thomas and I bought it when Michael was 4. Back then, the white paint was peeling, the porch sagged on one side, and the kitchen smelled faintly of old grease no matter how many times I scrubbed it. We could barely afford the down payment, but Thomas stood in the empty living room, spread his arms, and said, "Diane, this is where our life begins." He was right. We repaired the house one room at a time. Thomas replaced the porch boards himself. I painted the kitchen pale yellow. We planted a maple tree in the front yard, and every fall Michael would drag his feet through the leaves, while I pretended not to notice the mud he carried inside. Every object in that house had a story. The blue and white bowl on the dining table had been a wedding gift from my mother. The quilt Michael had packed into a cardboard box was the last thing she ever made. The framed photograph above the fireplace showed Thomas holding our newborn son with tears in his eyes. Those were not decorations. They were the record of my life. Thomas died 18 months before Michael packed them away. His heart had been weak for years, but his final decline came quickly. One week, he was complaining about the price of tomatoes at the grocery store. The next, he was in a hospital bed holding my hand and telling me not to be afraid. After 48 years of marriage, I came home alone. Grief changed the sound of the house. The refrigerator seemed louder. The floorboards creaked like footsteps. Some mornings, I reached across the bed before remembering there was no one there. But I was not helpless. I still drove myself to church and the grocery store. I paid my bills every Friday morning. I kept my medications in a labeled organizer. I cooked, cleaned, and walked around the block with my neighbor whenever the weather allowed. Michael began visiting more often after the funeral. At first, I was grateful. He replaced a loose handrail near the basement stairs. He brought soup on Sundays. He called every evening and asked, "You doing okay, Mom?" I told myself Thomas would have been proud of him. Then the questions changed. Did you take your pills? Did you lock the back door? Are you sure you paid the electric bill? The concern in his voice slowly became something harder. If I answered too quickly, he repeated the question. If I sounded annoyed, he said I was being defensive. One afternoon, he took a stack of envelopes from my kitchen counter. "I'll handle these," he said. "I've handled my own bills for more than 50 years. "I know, Mom. I'm just trying to make things easier." He smiled when he said it, but he did not put the mail down. Soon, he began opening my bank statements before giving them to me. At medical appointments, he interrupted me and answered questions meant for me. "How has your sleep been?" my doctor asked once. "She barely sleeps," Michael said. I turned toward him. "I sleep 6 hours most nights." He gave the doctor a patient smile. "She forgets how often she wakes up." That sentence stayed with me. He had not accused me of anything directly. He had simply planted doubt in the room and allowed it to grow. Lauren was less careful. She walked through my house as if she were inspecting a property she planned to sell. "This place needs a new roof," she said one Sunday. "The roof is 8 years old, and the bathrooms are dated. They work." She ran one finger across the dining room cabinet and looked at the dust. "It's a lot for one person, Diane." I hated the way she said one person, as if widowhood had reduced me to a problem of square footage. Another time, she stood at the kitchen window and stared into the backyard. "You could get a very good price for this place," she said. "Families want neighborhoods like this." "I'm not selling." She turned with a soft smile. "Not now, maybe." The words sounded harmless. They were not. Around that same time, certain pieces of mail stopped arriving. My monthly bank statements had always come during the first week. Then 2 months passed without one. The property tax notice did not appear either. When I asked Michael, he did not seem surprised. "I switched everything to paperless billing," he said. "You switched my accounts. It saves you trouble. I didn't ask you to do that." He sighed the way Thomas used to sigh when a jar refused to open. "Mom, this is what I mean. You get overwhelmed by small things." "I am not overwhelmed. Then why are you upset?" For a moment, I had no answer. That was Michael's new talent. He could cross a boundary, then make my reaction sound like evidence against me. The day after I found the blue diary, I began looking through drawers and cabinets. I told myself I was searching for missing statements. In truth, I was trying to understand how much of my life had already been rearranged without my knowledge. In the bottom drawer beside the refrigerator beneath takeout menus and old appliance manuals, I found a glossy folder. The cover showed a smiling, silver-haired couple walking beside a lake. Willow Creek Senior Living, it said. Inside were photographs of bright apartments, group dinners, exercise classes, and landscaped gardens. Someone had circled a one-bedroom unit in blue ink. My name was written across the top of the application. Diane Carter. Below it was an appointment date for the following Tuesday. A tour and personal needs assessment had already been scheduled. I read the page twice, then a third time. Michael had not been suggesting that I might move someday. He had begun the process. My phone rang while I was still holding the folder. Michael's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. For the first time since Thomas died, I did not feel lonely in that quiet house. I felt watched, and upstairs, hidden beneath a stack of towels, was the small blue diary my son did not know I had found. I barely slept that night. The brochure from Willow Creek Senior Living sat on my kitchen table beside a cup of cold coffee. Every time I looked at it, I felt as though someone had already decided the ending of my life without asking me to read the last chapter. The next morning, Michael called twice. I ignored both calls. An hour later, my front doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I looked through the peephole. Michael stood on the porch carrying a grocery bag. Lauren waited in the driveway with her arms folded. I considered pretending I wasn't home. Then I remembered something Thomas always said. If you spend your life hiding from trouble, trouble learns where you live. I unlocked the door. Michael smiled as though nothing had happened. I brought fresh fruit. I didn't ask for any. You shouldn't have to ask. He walked inside before I invited him. Lauren followed without saying hello. She looked around the living room. You unpacked some of the boxes? I live here. Michael set the groceries on the counter. We need to talk. I agree. His smile faded. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I picked up the brochure from the table. When were you planning to tell me about this? Michael glanced at it without surprise. I was waiting until everything was ready. Everything, the tour, the evaluation, the apartment. You made those appointments without asking me. I knew you'd say no. So you decided my answer didn't matter. He rubbed his forehead. Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Harder for whom? Harder for the son trying to remove his mother from her own home? Or harder for the mother who had just learned she was no longer included in decisions about her own life? I kept my voice calm. I'm staying here. Michael sighed. You can't. I can. You left the stove on last week. I stared at him. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. I made soup. I turned the burner off. I remember doing it. Lauren stepped closer. Michael smelled gas when he came over. I looked from one face to the other. There wasn't any gas. Michael shook his head slowly. Mom, this is exactly what worries me. What worries you? You don't remember. I remember perfectly. He spoke gently, almost kindly. Sometimes people don't realize their memory is slipping. I felt something cold settle in my chest. He wasn't arguing with me. He was rewriting reality. If I forgot, I asked quietly, why didn't you call the gas company? We opened the windows. Why didn't you tell me that day? You were upset enough already. None of it made sense. Thomas had always tested the stove before we left the kitchen. After he died, I continued doing it out of habit. Turn the knob. Wait. Touch the grate. One last look before walking away. I had repeated that routine thousands of times. Michael leaned forward. Last month you forgot your dental appointment. I rescheduled it. You forgot where your car keys were. I found them in my purse. You called me because you couldn't find them. I called because I wanted to know if I'd left them in your truck. Lauren folded her arms. You're proving his point. No, I said. I'm correcting yours. Silence filled the room. Then Lauren walked toward the window. This house isn't safe anymore. It was safe enough for you to visit every Sunday. Diane don't do this. I hated when she used my first name during arguments. Not Mom, not Mrs. Carter, just Diane. As though we were strangers negotiating over a property line. Michael pulled a folder from his briefcase. I wanted to avoid this. He opened it. Inside were photographs. The first showed dirty dishes in my sink. There had been 4 plates. I remembered them because Patricia had called that afternoon and I'd stopped washing dishes to answer the phone. The second photograph showed newspapers stacked beside my recliner. They were Sunday papers waiting to be recycled. The third showed 2 prescription bottles on my kitchen counter. One belonged to me, the other had been Thomas's. I hadn't been able to throw it away. Michael placed the photographs on the table one by one. The social worker will ask questions. I looked up sharply. The who? The social worker. What social worker? Someone from the county. You scheduled that too. It's just an assessment. I never agreed. You don't have to. The room suddenly felt smaller. What does that mean? He hesitated. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. If you continue refusing help, we may have to ask the court for guardianship. For a moment, I honestly didn't understand the word. Guardianship. It sounded like something that happened to children. Then it hit me. He wanted a judge to declare I was no longer capable of making my own decisions. You want control of my life? No. You want control of my house. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From yourself. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I couldn't believe those words were coming from my own son. I've lived alone for 18 months. You've made mistakes. So has everyone. You don't understand. No, Michael. I looked him straight in the eyes. I understand more than you think. For the first time, I saw irritation flash across his face. Only for a second. Then the gentle sun returned. I don't want this to become ugly. It already has. Lauren picked up her purse. We're wasting our time. Michael gathered the photographs, all except one. A picture had slipped beneath the edge of the table. Neither of them noticed. After they left, I locked the front door. Then I picked up the photograph. It showed a pile of unopened mail on my dining room table. Across the bottom, someone had typed 3 words. Failure to manage. Typed. Not handwritten. Not a personal reminder. A label. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I turned the photograph over. There was another note. Exhibit C, exhibit. Not family photos. Evidence. Evidence for someone. Evidence prepared long before today's conversation. My hands started shaking. I suddenly wanted to know how many photographs existed. 10, 20, 100. How long had my own son been documenting my life as though he were building a case against me? An hour later, I remembered something. When Michael had opened his briefcase, he'd left his phone on the kitchen counter while helping Lauren carry the grocery bags outside. He had only been gone for maybe 30 seconds. At the time, I hadn't paid attention. Now, I wished I had. I walked to the window. Their SUV had disappeared. Then another memory surfaced. When Michael picked up his phone, I had seen a folder on the screen. It contained rows of tiny photographs, dozens of them. Not 3, not 4. Dozens. Each image had a short title beneath it. Kitchen, medication, laundry, mail, living room, bathroom. He hadn't started collecting evidence recently. He had been building that file for months, maybe longer. I slowly opened the blue diary Thomas had hidden. My eyes fell on one sentence I hadn't noticed before. If Michael ever tries to prove you're incapable instead of asking how you're feeling, stop trusting what he says. I closed the diary. For the first time in my life, I realized I might have to protect myself from my own child. I locked my bedroom door before opening the diary again. I don't know why I did that. Michael didn't have a key. Lauren didn't even know where I kept the spare. But something inside me had shifted. The house no longer felt like a place I owned. It felt like a place someone else was studying. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the small blue book. Thomas's handwriting filled the first page, still the same as I remembered. Slightly slanted, careful. Every letter shaped as if he had time to think before putting it down. October 12th. That was the first entry. The maple tree is starting to turn. Diane says it looks like fire. I told her it looks like something worth protecting. I smiled without meaning to. That was Thomas. Even in simple things, he always found meaning. I kept reading. Most of the early entries were like that. Weather, grocery prices, small observations about neighbors, notes about his health, reminders about medication. Then slowly, the tone changed. November 3rd. Michael came by today. Asked if I could help him with a short-term investment. Says it's just a bridge loan. I told him I'd think about it. I paused. Michael had never mentioned that to me. I turned the page. November 10th. I gave Michael $10,000. He says it's temporary. Diane doesn't need to worry about it yet. My chest tightened. $10,000. I had no memory of that conversation. No memory of Thomas telling me. November 28th. Michael says the deal got delayed. Needs more time. I told him I don't like surprises when it comes to money. He promised everything is under control. I turned another page. December 12th. Another request. $5,000 this time. Says it's related to taxes. I asked for details. He avoided specifics. I didn't push hard enough. The words blurred for a moment. I blinked and kept reading. January 4th. Lauren visited with Michael. She mentioned selling the house, said it was too much for us. I told her this house is not a burden. It's a life. I felt my throat tighten. Even now he was defending it. Defending us. I flipped forward. The entries grew shorter. More direct. February 2nd. I checked the account today. There are transactions I don't remember approving. February 5th. Michael says I must have forgotten signing something at the bank. February 6th. I don't forget signing things. My hands began to shake. February 10th. I am starting to worry. I pressed my lips together. Thomas had written those words quietly. No anger, no accusation, just worry. February 18th. More money gone. Transfers labeled Parker Ridge Development. I asked Michael about it. He says it's the same project. I read the name again. Parker Ridge Development. I had never heard it before, but now it felt familiar, like something I should have noticed earlier. February 20th. I asked for documentation. Michael said he would bring it next week. February 27th. No documents, just reassurances. I swallowed hard. I knew that tone. I had heard it yesterday. I'll handle it. Don't worry. Trust me. I turned the page. March 3rd. I went to the bank today. There were more withdrawals than I expected. Some dates don't make sense. March 4th. I think Michael may be using the account access we gave him during the hospital visits. My heart stopped for a second. Hospital visits. I remembered those days. Thomas lying in a bed, machines beeping, nurses coming and going. Michael bringing paperwork saying, "Just sign here, Dad. It's for insurance." And me standing beside them, too tired, too scared to read every page. I gripped the diary tighter. March 6th. I confronted Michael. He admitted some transfers. Said he was going to pay everything back before Diane ever found out. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could see it. Thomas standing in the living room. Michael in front of him. Both trying to stay calm. Both failing. I opened my eyes and continued. He cried. I haven't seen him cry like that since he was a boy. He said he just needed time. The next line was written darker. He asked me not to tell Diane. I felt something break inside my chest. Thomas had protected him, even then, even when something was wrong. I turned the page slowly. March 12th, another withdrawal. I felt something break inside my chest. Thomas had protected him, even then, even when something was wrong. I turned the page slowly. March 12th, another withdrawal. March 15th. I am beginning to think I made a mistake. March 20th. Lauren asked again about selling the house. March 22nd. I told her no. The handwriting became tighter, more controlled, as if he was holding something back. March 25th. If Michael ever starts telling Diane she cannot take care of herself, that will not be about concern. I froze. That sentence echoed in my mind, word for word. Exactly what I had heard yesterday. I turned the page carefully. March 28th. If Michael ever starts telling Diane she cannot take care of herself, that will not be about concern. I froze. That sentence echoed in my mind. Word for word, exactly what I had heard yesterday. I turned the page carefully. March 28th. I don't want to believe my own son would do this. My vision blurred again. March 30th, but I cannot ignore what I see. I kept reading. April 2nd. I have moved part of our savings into a separate account Michael cannot access. April 3rd. I also met with Susan Mitchell today. Susan. The name meant nothing to me yet, but it would. I explained everything. She advised me to protect the house legally. My breath caught. April 5th. I have arranged something that Michael does not know about. I leaned forward. This was it. This was the part he had hidden. The part Michael had not found. April 6th. If anything happens to me, Diane will need proof. My fingers tightened around the diary. April 7th. I am leaving instructions. Not in this book. I flipped the page quickly. April 8th. I am sorry, Diane. I should have told you sooner. The next page was almost empty. Just one final sentence at the bottom. If Michael ever tries to take your independence, do not trust what he says. Trust what he does. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I slowly closed the diary. The room felt different. Not smaller. Clearer. For the first time, the confusion began to settle into something sharper. Michael wasn't just worried about me. He was following a pattern. The same pattern Thomas had seen. The same words. The same pressure. The same quiet manipulation. And now I understood something else. The diary was not the protection Thomas had left me. It was only the warning. The real protection was somewhere else. I didn't call Michael the next day. I didn't answer his messages either. Instead, I called the one person who had known me long enough to hear the truth before judging it. Patricia Reynolds. She answered on the second ring. Diane, everything okay? No, I said. Can I come over? There was a pause. Then she said, Of course, I'll put the coffee on. Patricia had lived 3 streets over for more than 30 years. She had watched Michael grow up. She had stood beside me at Thomas's funeral. If there was anyone I could trust to listen without turning my words into something else, it was her. When I walked into her kitchen, she didn't ask questions right away. She poured coffee. She sat across from me. She waited. That's how I knew I could speak. I placed the blue diary on the table. My son is trying to prove I can't take care of myself. Patricia didn't interrupt. He packed my house into boxes. I continued. He scheduled a social worker. He wants to sell the house. Patricia leaned forward slightly. And you don't want to go? I'm not confused, Patricia. I know you're not. The certainty in her voice hit me harder than I expected. For the first time since this started, someone wasn't questioning my reality. I opened the diary and turned it toward her. Thomas wrote this before he died. She adjusted her glasses and began reading. At first, her expression didn't change. Then her eyebrows drew together. Then her lips pressed into a thin line. When she reached the part about the bank withdrawals, she looked up. He never told you no. She shook her head slowly. That doesn't sound like Thomas. He thought he was protecting me. Patricia let out a quiet breath. That man protected everyone except himself. I nodded. That's what scares me. She went back to reading. When she finished, she closed the diary carefully. How much money are we talking about? I don't know yet, but it's about I don't know yet. But it's more than a few thousand. Yes. She tapped the table with her fingers. Did you check your accounts? Michael switched everything to online. And do you let him? I didn't know he had. More than a few thousand. Yes. She tapped the table with her fingers. Did you check your accounts? Michael switched everything to online. And you let him? I didn't know he had. Patricia leaned back. Okay, we need to slow down. You're not doing this alone. I felt something loosen in my chest. She stood up and walked to a small desk in the corner of the kitchen. I want to show you something, she said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folded receipt. Do you remember the day Thomas went to the bank by himself last spring? I frowned. He went alone. Yes, I saw him in the parking lot. You didn't tell me that. He told me not to worry you. That sounded exactly like him. Patricia placed the receipt in front of me. I was there that day. I had just finished paying my property tax. When I came out, I saw Thomas and Michael standing near the entrance. I looked at the paper, but my attention was on her voice. They were arguing, she continued. About what I couldn't hear everything. But I heard Thomas say, "You don't get to decide that." My stomach tightened, and Michael, I asked. He kept looking around, like he didn't want anyone to notice. I sat back slowly. That matches the diary. Yes, it does. Patricia folded her hands. And it means this didn't start recently. I nodded. It's been going on for at least a year. At least. Silence filled the kitchen. Then Patricia spoke again. Do you have any recent bank statements? No? Any checks, receipts, anything with account numbers? I thought for a moment. I have some old files in the hall closet. Good. We'll start there. She smiled faintly. I told you, you're not doing this alone. We drove back to my house together. For the first time since Michael had started packing boxes, I didn't feel like I was walking into a place that was being taken from me. I felt like I was walking into a place I needed to defend. We spent the next hour going through old folders, tax returns, utility bills, insurance statements. Finally, we found what we needed. A stack of bank records from before Michael switched everything to online. Patricia spread them across the dining table. Let's look for patterns, she said. What kind of patterns? Repeated transfers, unusual amounts, anything that doesn't match your normal spending. I sat beside her. At first, everything looked normal. Grocery stores, pharmacy, electric bill, water bill. Then Patricia tapped one line with her finger. What's this? I leaned closer. A transfer. $2,500. The description read, PRD Holdings. I don't recognize that, I said. Look at the date. I did. It was from nearly 2 years ago. We kept scanning. Another one appeared. $3,000. Same description. Then another. $5,000. Then $7,500. The amounts were increasing. Gradually. Carefully. As if someone was testing how much they could take without being noticed. My hands started to shake again. How many are there? I asked. Patricia didn't answer right away. She flipped through the pages faster now, counting silently. Then she stopped. There are more than 20 transactions here. My throat tightened. That's not possible. It is. She turned the papers toward me. These add up to over $50,000. The room felt like it was tilting. 50,000? And these are just the records you still have. I pressed my hand against the table. There could be more. There probably are. I stared at the numbers. Each one was a decision. Each one was a moment Michael had chosen to take something that wasn't his. PRD Holdings, Patricia said quietly. That name sounds familiar, from where she stood up and walked to her laptop. I think I saw it in a local business report. She typed quickly. Seconds later, she turned the screen toward me. Parker Ridge Development, PRD. My stomach dropped. That's the same name Thomas wrote in the diary. Patricia clicked on the company profile. The owner's name appeared at the top. Kevin Parker. I stared at it. That's Lauren's brother, I said slowly. Patricia nodded. Yes, it is. Everything suddenly connected. The pressure to sell the house, the quiet transfers, the missing money. Lauren wasn't just suggesting we sell. Her family was already involved. And Michael. Michael wasn't just trying to move me. He was trying to fix something. Something big enough to risk everything. I looked at Patricia. My son didn't just take money. No, she said softly. He invested it in his wife's family business. And now he needs more. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we had said, because now for the first time I understood why he needed my house. The next morning, I went to the bank. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't call ahead. I simply got into my car, drove across town, and walked through the same glass doors Thomas had walked through so many times before me. The lobby looked exactly the same. Same marble floor, same low hum of quiet conversations, same smell of paper and polish. For a moment, I almost turned around. Then I remembered the number Patricia had said out loud the day before. 50,000. And that was only what we could see. I stepped forward. I need to speak with someone about my account, I told the receptionist. She gave me a polite smile. Of course, Mrs. Carter. Do you have an appointment? No, that's okay. Please have a seat. I sat in one of the chairs near the window. My hands were steady, but inside, everything felt tight. 10 minutes later, a man in his 40s approached me. Mrs. Carter, I'm Daniel Harris, branch manager. How can I help you today? I stood up and followed him into a small office. Once the door closed, I took a breath. I want to review my account activity, I said. Certainly, and I want to know who has access to my accounts. He nodded. Let me pull that up for you. He turned to his computer. I watched his face as he read the screen. At first, his expression stayed neutral. Then it changed. Just slightly. Mrs. Carter, he said carefully. Your son is listed as having financial power of attorney. I felt my chest tighten. I never gave him that. It was filed last year. Last year? Yes. That's not possible. He turned the screen toward me. There's a signed document on file. I leaned forward. My name was there. My signature was there. At least it looked like my signature. I don't remember signing this, I said. Mr. Harris nodded slowly. Do you remember signing any documents while your husband was hospitalized? My mind went back to those days. The hospital room, the machines. Michael standing beside the bed with a stack of papers. Just sign here, Mom. It's for insurance. I closed my eyes for a second. I signed something I admitted, but I thought it was medical paperwork. This document grants your son authority to manage certain financial matters. How much authority? I signed something. I admitted, but I thought it was medical paperwork. This document grants your son authority to manage certain financial matters. How much authority? He hesitated. He can make transfers, access accounts, handle transactions on your behalf. My hands curled into fists. So he could move money without asking me. If the document is valid, yes. The word valid echoed in my mind. If I asked, if there are concerns about how the document was obtained, that's something an attorney would need to review. I nodded slowly. I want copies of everything. Of course, and I want to see all transactions for the past 3 years. That may take some time to compile. I'll wait. He studied my face for a moment. Then he said quietly, Mrs. Carter, are you concerned about misuse? I held his gaze. Yes. He nodded once. I understand. For the next 20 minutes, he printed records, pages and pages, numbers, dates, transfers. When he handed them to me, the stack felt heavier than paper. It felt like proof. "Is there anything else I can do?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to know if there are any restrictions on my account." He checked again. "There are no holds or freezes at this time." "Can I place one? You can request additional verification for large transactions. I want that." He nodded. "I'll note it in your account." As I stood to leave, he added one more thing. "If you're concerned about financial exploitation, you should speak with an attorney as soon as possible. I'll note it in your account." As I stood to leave, he added one more thing. "If you're concerned about financial exploitation, you should speak with an attorney as soon as possible." I plan to. I walked out of the bank with the documents pressed tightly against my chest. For the first time, I had something solid. Not just suspicions, not just words in a diary. Numbers. Evidence. When I got back home, Michael's car was in the driveway. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him where I was going. I hadn't called him. I hadn't answered his messages. And yet, he was here. Waiting. I opened the front door slowly. Michael stood in the living room, arms crossed, expression tight. "Where were you?" he asked. I set my purse down calmly. Out. Out where I don't report my movements to you." His jaw tightened. "I called you 3 times. I saw, and you didn't answer. I chose not to." For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he stepped closer. "You went to the bank." It wasn't a question. My heart skipped. How do you know that he didn't answer right away? Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen. Then he turned it toward me. A map appeared. A small blue dot blinked on the screen. Right over the bank. My breath caught. "You've been tracking me? It's for your safety. I never agreed to this. You said you wanted emergency access. I said I wanted a phone that could call for help, not one that reports my location every minute." He lowered the phone slowly. "If something happened to you, I would need to know where you are. Nothing happened to me. You could have fallen. You could have been confused. I was at the bank, Michael." His voice sharpened. Why I held his gaze? Because I wanted to understand my own accounts. "You don't need to do that." "I do. That's my responsibility." "No," I said. "It isn't." Silence stretched between us. Then he took a step closer. "What did they tell you I didn't answer? Did they show you the records I stayed quiet?" His eyes narrowed. "Mom, what did you see?" I picked up the stack of papers from the table. "These." He stared at them. Then back at me. For the first time, I saw something different in his face. Not concern, not patience. Fear. Real fear. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the only one who understood what those numbers meant. I didn't argue with Michael. Not that day. Not after I saw his face. Fear has a way of revealing more truth than anger ever could. So instead of confronting him, I stepped back. "I'm tired," I said quietly. He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I don't want to fight right now." His eyes searched my face, trying to read something. "What did the bank tell you?" "Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today." I picked up the stack of documents and walked past him. "Mom," I said, "I'm tired." I closed my bedroom door behind me, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I sat down at my desk and stared at the diary. Thomas had left me a warning, but he had also left me something else. A name. Susan Mitchell. I picked up my phone. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I dialed. The call connected on the third ring. Mitchell Law Office. Yes, I'm looking for Susan Mitchell. This is she. Her voice was calm, measured. My name is Diane Carter. There was a brief pause. Then she said, Mrs. Carter. She knew my name. My heart skipped. I wasn't sure you would call, she added. I gripped the phone tighter. You knew I might. Yes. How? Because your husband asked me to expect it. The room went silent. When I asked, about 2 months before he passed, I closed my eyes. Thomas had planned this. Not everything, but enough. I found his diary, I said. That's not what he intended you to find first. I know. Another pause. Are you alone right now? She asked. Yes. Good. Then listen carefully. Her tone changed slightly. More serious. Your husband came to me with concerns about financial activity involving your son? I know. He did not want to accuse Michael without proof. But he also did not want to leave you unprotected. I sat up straighter. What did he do? He asked me to prepare legal documents that would secure your home and certain assets beyond the reach of standard power of attorney. My heart started beating faster. You mean Michael can't sell my house? Not if those documents are in effect? I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And are they? I asked. Yes. Relief washed through me so quickly it almost made me dizzy. For the first time since this began, I wasn't completely exposed. But there's more, she said. Of course there was. There always is. Your husband also left something in my office, a sealed envelope. My grip tightened again. What's in it? I don't know. You didn't open it. No, he was very clear. It was to remain sealed unless certain conditions were met. What conditions, if your independence or your ownership of the house was threatened? I let out a slow breath. Then it's time. Yes, she said, it is. I stood up. I can come today. I would prefer that. I'll be there in an hour. Mrs. Carter. Yes, be careful who you tell about this meeting. My stomach tightened. Why? Because someone has already tried to access your husband's file. Cold spread through my chest. What do you mean? About 3 weeks ago, we received a request for archived documents under your husband's name. Who made the request? The request was submitted using your son's information. I closed my eyes. Michael knew, not everything, but enough to be looking. Did they get anything I asked? No. Why not? Because we require in-person verification for sensitive records. The request was denied. I exhaled slowly. So he knows something exists. Yes. But not what? Correct. That gave me a small advantage. Not much. But something. It'll be there soon, I said. It'll be waiting. I ended the call and sat still for a moment. Then I stood up and grabbed my coat. When I opened the bedroom door, Michael was still in the living room. He looked up immediately. Where are you going? I didn't hesitate. For a walk. You just said you were tired. I need fresh air. He studied me. You shouldn't go alone. I've been going alone for 18 months. That was before what he didn't answer. I stepped toward the door. Mom, he said we need to talk about those documents. We will. When I'm ready. That's not how this works. I turned to face him. Yes, I said quietly. It is. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I opened the door and walked out. As I got into my car, I felt something shift inside me. Fear was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. I drove to Susan Mitchell's office across town, a small brick building with a simple sign. Nothing flashy, nothing obvious. Which was probably why Thomas had chosen it. Inside, the air smelled like paper and coffee. A receptionist looked up. Mrs. Carter. Yes, she's expecting you, right this way. I followed her down a narrow hallway. When she opened the office door, Susan Mitchell stood up from behind her desk. She was older than I expected. Gray hair, sharp eyes, steady posture. "Diane," she said gently. I stepped inside. "Thank you for seeing me." She closed the door behind me. Then she walked to a small safe in the corner. "I believe this belongs to you." She turned the dial slowly, one click at a time, each sound echoing louder than it should. Finally, the safe opened. She reached inside and pulled out a thick envelope, sealed, untouched. My name written across the front, in Thomas's handwriting. My throat tightened. "He told me this might be the most important thing he ever gave you," Susan said. I stepped forward slowly and took the envelope. For a moment, I didn't open it because I knew whatever was inside would change everything. I didn't open the envelope right away. That surprised me. 18 months ago, I would have torn it open the second it touched my hands. I would have needed to know, needed to understand. But now I had learned something. The truth had layers, and opening them too fast could be just as dangerous as ignoring them. Susan watched me carefully. "You don't have to rush," she said. "I know, but you should open it here. Why, in case there's something you don't understand?" I nodded. That made sense. Everything lately had been something I didn't understand. I sat down across from her desk. The envelope felt heavier than it should. My name was written in Thomas's handwriting, not rushed, not shaky, steady, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I ran my finger across the ink. Then I broke the seal. Inside, there were several documents, neatly arranged, organized. Thomas had always been careful like that, even at the end. I pulled out the first page, a notarized statement. I began to read. "My name is Thomas Carter. I am of sound mind. This statement is written voluntarily and without coercion." My throat tightened. Every word felt final, clear, deliberate. He described the same things I had just read in the diary. Michael's requests, the shifting explanations, the growing amounts. But this time, there were numbers, exact amounts, dates, account references, everything Thomas had suspected. He had documented. I turned the page. There were copies of bank transactions, highlighted, marked, each one tied to the same name, Parker Ridge Development. My chest tightened again. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore, it was evidence, legal evidence. I looked up at Susan. "This is enough to prove it, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "It's a strong start." A start. "We'll need to match this with current records. But yes, your husband did everything right." I looked back down. The next document was different. A trust agreement. I skimmed the first paragraph, then the second, then I stopped. "This says the house can't be sold. Correct. Not through power of attorney, correct. Only by me. Yes. And only if you are deemed competent and acting voluntarily." My hands trembled. "So Michael can't force me to sell?" "No. Even if he gets guardianship?" She paused. "That depends on the court, but this trust makes it much harder." Harder, not impossible. That word stayed with me. I set the trust document aside. There was one more item in the envelope. A folded piece of paper, different from the rest. Not typed, handwritten. My heart knew what it was before my mind caught up. "Diane," it began. I had to stop for a second, just to breathe. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Tears filled my eyes immediately. "I thought I could fix this quietly. I thought I could protect you from the pain of knowing our son was struggling." I pressed my lips together. I was wrong. I blinked hard and kept reading. Michael is not a bad man, but he is making bad choices, and he is hiding them behind promises he cannot keep. That was exactly what I had seen, exactly what I had heard. If he asks you to trust him without showing you the truth, don't. I wiped my eyes. If he tells you that you're confused, look at the facts, not his words. The room felt very still. If he tries to take control of your life in the name of helping you, that is not help. I swallowed. That sentence hit the hardest, because it described everything that was happening now. I should have trusted you enough to face this together. Instead, I tried to carry it alone. I won't make that mistake again, even if I'm not there. My hands tightened around the paper. You are stronger than you think, Diane. A tear slid down my cheek. You always have been. I let out a shaky breath. I love you. That was the last line. Simple, direct, final. I folded the letter slowly. For a long moment I couldn't speak. Susan didn't interrupt. She just waited. Finally I looked up. He knew, I said quietly. Yes. He saw all of it. Yes. And he tried to stop it. She nodded. He did everything he could without destroying your family. I let out a bitter breath. And now it's up to me to finish it. Yes, she said gently. It is. I sat back in the chair. The fear I had been carrying for days was still there, but something else had replaced it. Clarity. Michael wasn't acting out of concern. He wasn't confused. He wasn't overprotective. He was desperate. And desperate people don't stop. They escalate. What do I do next? I asked. Susan leaned forward. We build a case. Against my own son. Yes, the words felt heavy, but they didn't feel wrong. We document everything, she continued. We secure your accounts. We prepare for the guardianship hearing. So he already filed, not yet, but he will. Yes. I nodded slowly. I also want you to meet someone, she added, an advocate who specializes in financial abuse cases involving older adults. I almost laughed. Is that what this is now? Yes, she said firmly. It is. I looked down at the documents again, at Thomas's handwriting, at the numbers, at the truth. Then I nodded. Okay. Susan gave me a steady look. Are you sure? I met her eyes. Yes. For the first time since Michael packed my life into boxes, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized something else. If Michael was willing to track my phone, if he was willing to build evidence against me, then this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't go home right away. After leaving Susan's office, I sat in my car with the envelope on my lap. Everything had changed, but nothing had ended. That was the part that mattered. Michael still believed he was in control, and for now, I needed him to keep believing that. I drove to Patricia's house instead. When she opened the door, she didn't ask anything. She just looked at my face and stepped aside. Come in. I walked into her kitchen and placed the envelope on the table. He left more than a diary, I said. Patricia sat down slowly. I figured he might. I handed her the notarized statement first. She read in silence, then she looked up. This is solid. There's more. I gave her the trust document. She scanned it quickly. Diane, this protects the house. I know. Michael's plan had a crack in it, a big one. But cracks didn't stop desperate people. They made them push harder. There's one more thing, I said. I handed her Thomas's letter. She read it slower than the rest. When she finished, she folded it carefully. That man knew exactly who you were, she said softly. I nodded. He trusted me to handle this. And you will. I took a breath. I need a plan. Patricia leaned forward. Good, because reacting isn't going to be enough anymore. She was right. Michael had been planning for months, maybe longer. I had just started. What's the first step? I asked. Control, she said. Control of what? Everything you still can. She grabbed a notepad. We listed out. I watched as she wrote. Your house, your bank accounts, your phone, your mail. My phone. You said he was tracking you. I nodded. That stops today. And if he notices, he will, she said. But that's not your problem. Your safety is. She slid the notepad toward me. Next. I read it. Accounts. We freeze anything we can, she continued. Limit access. Require verification. I already asked the bank for additional checks. Good. She wrote something else. Credit. I don't have credit cards. Doesn't matter. We lock it anyway. I stared at the list. This didn't feel like my life. It felt like a case. Because it was. And the social worker? I asked. Patricia looked up. You're going to let them come. I don't want them in my house. I know. But refusing makes you look like you're hiding something. She was right. I hated that she was right. So I cooperate. Yes, but carefully. How you stay calm. You answer clearly. You don't let Michael speak for you. I nodded slowly. And if Lauren tries something, she will. So I cooperate. Yes, but carefully. How you stay calm. You answer clearly. You don't let Michael speak for you. I nodded slowly. And if Lauren tries something? She will. Patricia said without hesitation. I looked at her. You're that sure? Yes. Why? Because people like that don't stop at one tactic. They layer them. I thought about the moved keys, the misplaced pills, the staged confusion. She's already started, I said quietly. Patricia nodded. Then we stay ahead of her. I leaned back in the chair. For the first time, I felt something close to control again. Not complete, but enough to move. What about the money? I asked. That's where Susan comes in. She said we'll build a case. Then we help her. How we gather everything. Every record, every statement, every transaction. I nodded. And Michael? Patricia hesitated. What about him? Do I confront him? She shook her head immediately. No, why not? Because he's not ready to tell the truth. I don't need him to be ready. Yes, you do, she said firmly. If you confront him now, he'll deny everything. Or worse, he'll double down. I thought about his face at the house. The fear. You're right, I said quietly. So we wait, we prepare. There was a difference. A big one. That night, I went home. Michael wasn't there. But something felt off the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet, too arranged. I walked into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. But normal had become suspicious. I opened the drawer where I kept my medication. The organizer was there. But the pills were wrong. Different colors. Different order. My heart started beating faster. I pulled out the bottle labels. They matched. But the arrangement didn't. Someone had moved them, deliberately. I closed the drawer slowly. Then I walked into the living room. The stack of mail I had left on the table was gone. Not moved. Gone. I stood still, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No movement. Just silence. Then I saw it. A single envelope. Left in the center of the table. Not left in the center of the table. Not mine. No stamp. No return address. My name written on the front, in Michael's handwriting. I stepped closer and opened it. Inside was one sheet of paper, typed. 3 lines. Stop digging, mine. No stamp, no return address. My name written on the front, in Michael's handwriting. I stepped closer and opened it. Inside was one sheet of paper, typed. 3 lines. Stop digging. You don't understand what you're risking. Let me fix this. My hands went cold. This wasn't concern. This wasn't control. This was a warning. And warnings only come when someone feels threatened. I folded the paper slowly. For the first time since this began, I wasn't just uncovering something. I was pushing back. And Michael had felt it. I didn't call Michael that night. I didn't respond to his message. I didn't acknowledge the warning he left on my table. Instead, I followed the plan. The next morning, I changed the locks. The locksmith arrived at 9:15. A quiet man. Didn't ask questions. He worked efficiently replacing the front door lock, the back door, and even the small side entrance Thomas used when he worked in the yard. Anyone else have keys? He asked. My son. He nodded. Not anymore. When he left, I stood in the doorway for a long moment, holding the new key in my hand. It felt strange, like reclaiming something that had never been taken legally, but had been taken anyway. Next, I bought a new phone, not because I wanted one, but because I needed one, Patricia insisted. You don't know what he installed on the old one, she said. So I went to a small electronics store across town, paid cash, didn't connect it to anything Michael had access to. When I turned it on, the silence was different. No shared location, no tracking, no invisible connection. For the first time in weeks, I felt unseen, and that mattered. By noon, I was back at Susan's office. This time, I wasn't alone. Diane, this is Emily Foster, Susan said. Emily stood up and shook my hand. She was younger than I expected, early 40s maybe. Sharp eyes, calm posture. I've reviewed what Susan sent me, she said. You're dealing with financial exploitation and coercive control. Hearing the words out loud made everything feel more real, more official, more serious. I thought so, I said quietly. Emily nodded. Your instincts are correct. She sat down across from me. Let's go step by step. I nodded. First, we document everything, she said. Every interaction, every message, every change in your home. I found my medication in your home. I found my medication rearranged yesterday. Write it down. I will. Second, we secure your finances. Susan is helping with that. Good. Well, also freeze your credit. I don't have debt ranged yesterday. Write it down. I will. Second, we secure your finances. Susan is helping with that. Good. Well, also freeze your credit. I don't have debt. That's not the point, she said. It prevents anyone from opening accounts in your name. I felt a chill run through me. Would Michael do that? Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, we don't assume limits when someone is under pressure. That was answer enough. Third, she continued, we prepare for escalation. What kind of escalation legal? I already knew the answer. Guardianship, I said. Yes. I exhaled slowly. He told me he was considering it. He's not just considering it, Emily said. Has preparing it. I looked at Susan. She nodded. That's our assessment as well. The room felt heavier. So what happens when he files? Emily leaned forward. You fight it. How? With evidence. She tapped the folder in front of her. You have more than most people in your position. The diary, the statement, the transactions, the trust. I nodded, and the social worker Emily's expression sharpened slightly. That visit matters. How it's one of the first impressions a court may rely on. I felt my stomach tighten. So if they believe Michael, they won't, she said firmly. Not if you stay calm. Not if you present clearly. I took a breath. And Lauren, Emily gave a small, knowing look. She's part of the strategy. I thought so. Then treat her like it? That meant something specific. Don't react emotionally. she added. That's what they want. I nodded slowly. It was becoming clear. This wasn't just a family conflict anymore. It was a controlled situation. Designed, planned, and I was expected to play a role. The confused mother, the overwhelmed widow, the woman who needed help. But I wasn't going to play that role. I understand, I said. Emily studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. Good. The overwhelmed widow, the woman who needed help. But I wasn't going to play that role. I understand, I said. Emily studied, I understand, I said. Emily studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. Good. When I left Susan's office that afternoon, I felt different again. Not lighter, but sharper. Every step had purpose now. Every action mattered. When I got home for a moment, then she nodded. Good. When I left Susan's office that afternoon, I felt different again. Not lighter, but sharper. Every step had purpose now. Every action mattered. When I got home, Michael was waiting, again. But this time, something was different. He wasn't standing inside. He was outside, on the porch, like he no longer belonged inside without permission. I opened the door slowly. What are you doing here? I asked. He looked at the lock. You changed it. Yes. Why? Because I wanted to. His jaw tightened. You don't need to do this. I already did. He stepped closer. Mom, you're making a mistake. No, I said calmly. I'm correcting one. His eyes flickered. That same fear again. What did Susan tell you? He asked. Enough. That's not helpful. It's not meant to be. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand what's happening. Then explain it. Silence. He looked away, then back at me. It's complicated. No, I said. It's not. Another pause. Then his voice lowered. If this goes the wrong way, everything falls apart. What does that mean? My job. My house. Everything. I stared at him. So that's what this is about. He didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. You're not protecting me, I said quietly. You're protecting yourself. That's not fair, isn't it? His shoulders dropped slightly. For a second, I saw something real. Not manipulation, not control. Fear. But fear didn't excuse what he had done. I can fix this, he said. How? I just need time. You've already taken years. He flinched. I'll put everything back. You can't put trust back. Silence again. Then he said something that changed everything. If you don't cooperate, you'll have no choice. I felt my body go still. No choice about what he hesitated. Then he said it. Ill file for guardianship. The words landed heavy. Final. Real. I nodded slowly. Then I guess, well, see what the court thinks. His face hardened. For the first time, there was no softness left. No patience, no careful tone. Just tension. You're forcing this, he said. No, I replied. You are. He stood there for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked away. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it. It had started. Not the suspicion, not the tension, the real fight. 2 days later, Michael stopped pretending. The envelope, the warning, the silence between us. All of it had pushed things forward. That morning, I received a certified letter. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. But I opened it anyway. Inside was a formal notice. Petition for guardianship. Filed in county court. Filed by Michael Carter. My own son. For a moment, I just stood in the hallway, reading the words again and again. Concern for cognitive decline, inability to manage finances, unsafe living conditions. Each sentence felt like a lie written in careful handwriting. But it wasn't just a lie. It was a strategy. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table and picked up the phone. I didn't call Patricia first. I didn't call Susan. I called Michael. He answered immediately. "Mom?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "I got the letter," I said. Silence. "Then I was going to talk to you about it." "You already did," I said quietly. You already did," I said quietly. "You just didn't use words." He exhaled. "This is for your protection." "No," I said. "It isn't. You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly." "You don't," he insisted. "If things collapse, then they collapse. Just didn't use words." He exhaled. "This is for your protection." "No," I said. "It isn't. You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly." "You don't," he insisted. "If things collapse, then they collapse." Silence. Then his tone changed, sharpened. "You're being stubborn. I'm being clear. You're putting everything at risk. You already did that." Another silence. Then he said something softer, almost pleading. "Mom, just cooperate." "With what? With the process?" "You mean give you control. I mean, let me fix things. You mean fix your mistakes." His breath hitched slightly. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I closed my eyes for a second, because that question hurt more than anything else. "I could ask you the same thing." He didn't answer. "I trusted you," I continued. "I know. No, Michael, you don't." My voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. "I trusted you with my home, my accounts, my life. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It already has." Another pause. Then, well, let the court decide." The words landed between us like a door closing. "Fine," I said, and I hung up. That afternoon, I met with Susan and Emily again. This time, the room felt different, more focused, more urgent. "It's filed," I said, placing the letter on the table. Susan nodded. "We expected that." Emily picked up the document and scanned it quickly. "They're moving fast. What does that mean?" "It means they think time is against them." That made sense. If Michael's situation was as bad as it looked, he couldn't afford delays. "What happens next?" I asked. "There will be a hearing," Susan said. "Within a couple of weeks." "That soon?" "Yes." Emily leaned forward. "This is where preparation matters." I nodded. "I'm ready." "Good," she said. "Because this isn't just about facts. It's about perception." I knew what she meant. How I appear? Yes. And how they make me appear? This is where preparation matters. I nodded. "I'm ready." "Good," she said. "Because this isn't just about facts. It's about perception." I knew what she meant. How I appear. Yes. And how they make me appear. Exactly. Susan opened a folder. "Well-present medical evaluations, financial records, and your husband's statement, and the trust I asked." "That protects the house," she said. "But this case is about your capacity." I took a breath. "So I have to prove I'm not confused." "You don't prove it," Emily said. "You show it." "How?" "Consistency, clarity, calm." I nodded slowly. "And Michael?" "He'll present the opposite that was already happening." "He has photos," I said. "What kind?" Susan asked. "Dishes, mail, medication, normal things." Emily exchanged a look with Susan. "That's common," she said. "Framing everyday life as dysfunction." "And Lauren?" I asked. "She'll testify," Susan said. "I expected that." Emily leaned back slightly. "They'll try to provoke you. I won't let them." "You say that now," she said gently, "but in the moment it's harder." I knew that too, but I also knew something else. I wasn't the same person I had been a week ago. "I'll be ready," I said. Emily studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. "Good." That evening, I prepared. Not emotionally, practically. I walked through my house with a notebook. Every room, every drawer, every cabinet. I wrote down where everything belonged, where everything had been moved, what had changed. Not because I needed to remember, but because I needed to show it. When I reached the kitchen, I stopped. The medication drawer. I opened it slowly. Everything was exactly as I had left it. Too exact. Too neat, as if someone had corrected it after I noticed. I closed the drawer. Then I walked to the living room. The mail had returned, stacked neatly, aligned. Again, too neat. Michael had been here, or Lauren had, fixing the story, rewriting the evidence. I stood there for a long moment. Then I did something I hadn't done before. I moved things myself, slightly, deliberately, not to create confusion, but to mark the space, to know if someone came back again. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what they did. I was watching. The next morning, the social worker arrived. Rachel Thompson, mid-40s, professional, observant. Michael and Lauren arrived with her. Of course they did. Michael smiled when he saw me. Mom. I didn't return the smile. Rachel, he said, thank you for coming. She nodded. Mrs. Carter. Diane, I said. She smiled slightly. Diane. We sat in the living room. Michael positioned himself close. Too close. As if proximity meant authority. Lauren sat across from me. Watching. Waiting. Rachel opened her notebook. I'm here to assess your daily living and support needs. I understand. She looked at me directly. Can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you? Before I could answer Michael, SP. Okay? She struggles with I can answer, I understand. She looked at me directly. Can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you? Before I could answer, Michael spoke. She struggles with I can answer, I said calmly. Rachel glanced at him, then back at me. Yes, please. I described my routine. Morning coffee, medication, groceries, bills, simple things, clear things. Rachel nodded as she wrote. And your finances? She asked. I manage them. Michael shifted beside me. She's had some confusion. I haven't, I said. Still calm, still steady. Rachel looked between us, noting the difference. Good. Let her see it. Lauren leaned forward. She forgets small things. Like what I haven't, I said. Still calm, still steady. Rachel looked between us, noting the difference. Good. Let her see it. Lauren leaned forward. She forgets small things. Like what Rachel asked. Lauren hesitated, then said appointments, keys, medication. I met Rachel's eyes. I misplaced my keys once I said. I found them in medication, Rachel asked. I use a weekly organizer. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, brought it back, opened it. Every compartment labeled, every dose correct. Rachel nodded again. Michael didn't speak. For the first time. He was watching me, not controlling, not directing. Watching. Because something had changed, and he could feel it. The visit lasted 40 minutes. When Rachel left, she didn't say much. But she looked at me one last time, long enough to matter. Michael walked her to the door. Lauren stayed behind, watching me. Then she smiled, a small, tight smile. You're playing this well, she said quietly. I met her gaze. I'm not playing. Her smile didn't fade. That's what makes it dangerous. I didn't respond, because I understood something now. They weren't just trying to win. They were afraid of losing. And that was the first real advantage I had. The hearing was scheduled for 11 days later. 11 days. That was all the time Michael needed to try to prove I had lost my mind. And all the time I had to prove I hadn't. The days moved differently after that. Everything became measured. deliberate. Even the smallest actions felt like they mattered. Because they did. 3 days before the hearing, Susan called me. "We need one more thing," she said. "What a formal cognitive evaluation." I felt a flicker of irritation. "You don't think I'm capable either?" "That's not the point," she said calmly. "The court expects documentation." I exhaled slowly. Fine. The appointment was scheduled for the next morning. A neurologist, Dr. Alan Pierce. I sat across from him in a quiet office. He asked simple questions. Dates, names, memory recall, problem solving. At first it felt insulting. Then I realized something. Michael was counting on me reacting that way, getting frustrated, getting emotional. So I stayed calm, clear, focused. At the end, Dr. Pierce closed his notebook. "You're doing well," he said. "I know." He smiled slightly. "I'll provide a written report." "Thank you." As I left his office, I felt something steady settle inside me. Another piece of the truth. Another layer of protection. The morning of the hearing, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I was nervous, because I was ready. I made coffee, took my medication, checked my notes one last time. Routine, consistency, control. When I stepped outside, Patricia was already waiting in her car. "You ready?" she asked. Yes, we drove to the courthouse in silence. Not because we had nothing to say, because everything had already been said. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches, a raised bench for the judge. Quiet. Too quiet. Michael was already there. Lauren beside him. Both dressed carefully, controlled, prepared, just like me. He looked at me as I walked in. Not angry, not soft, focused. Like this was business now, not family. Good. That made it easier. Susan greeted me at the front. "We're ready," she said. Emily stood beside her, watching everything. The judge entered a few minutes later. Everyone stood, then sat. And just like that, it began. Michael's lawyer spoke first. Confident, polished. She is a 72-year-old widow showing signs of cognitive decline. I listened, didn't react. She has demonstrated an inability to manage daily tasks. Still calm. We have documented evidence. That part mattered. The photos, the notes, the narrative. Lauren was called to testify. She walked to the stand without hesitation. "She forgets things," she said. "How often?" the lawyer asked. "Almost daily." I kept my face still. "That's not true." She continued. "She leaves things out, misplaces medication, gets confused about appointments." The lawyer nodded. "And how does that affect her safety?" "I'm worried she might hurt herself without realizing it." Worried. That word again. Always concern, never control. Then Michael testified. "My mom has always been strong," he said. That almost made me laugh, which is why this is so hard. Of course it was, for her, not for him. She doesn't see what's happening. I met his eyes. I see everything I thought. Everything. Then Susan stood. Our turn. She called Dr. Pierce. He testified clearly, directly. "Mrs. Carter shows no signs of cognitive impairment. No hesitation, no doubt." Michael shifted in his seat. Good. Let him feel it. Next came Rachel, the social worker. She sat calmly. "I observed the interaction," she said. "What did you notice?" Susan asked. The son frequently answered for the mother. Michael's lawyer stood. "Objection," overruled the judge said. Rachel continued. The mother demonstrated clear understanding of her routine medications and finances. That mattered. More than anything, Lauren had said. Then Susan presented the financial records. The transfers. The amounts. The pattern. The room shifted. I felt it. The attention. The weight. Then she presented Thomas's notarized statement, and everything changed. This document outlines concerns raised by the husband prior to his death, she said. Michael's lawyer stood again. Objection denied, the judge said. The statement was read aloud. Every word, every detail, every warning. Michael didn't look at me anymore. He stared at the table. Good. Let him hear it. Let him feel it. Then came the final piece, the medical letter Michael had submitted. Susan held it up. We request verification. The judge nodded. The doctor who signed it had already been contacted. His statement was read. I did not write the full content of this letter. My original note was altered. A pause, heavy, final. Michael's lawyer didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had caught up. The judge leaned forward. The petition for guardianship is denied. Just like that. Denied. Mrs. Carter is competent to manage her own affairs. I felt something release inside me. Not relief. Something deeper. Restoration. The court also notes concerns regarding the accuracy of submitted documentation. That was for Michael, not me. This matter may be referred for further review. That was for later. For consequences. For truth. When we stepped outside the courtroom, Michael followed me. Mom, I turned. Not angry, not emotional. Clear. This is over, I said. No, he said, his voice cracked. This isn't over. For the first time I believed him, because this had never been about winning one moment. It was about everything underneath it. And that was just beginning to come apart. Michael didn't leave after the hearing. Not really. He walked away from the courthouse, but he didn't disappear. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Instead, he stayed close. Close enough to remind me this wasn't over. 2 days later, he came back to the house. No warning, no call, just a knock at the door. I saw him through the window before I opened it. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then I did. Slowly. Carefully. What do you want? I asked. His face looked different. Tired. Not defeated, but cracked. We need to talk. We already did. No, he said quietly. We didn't. I didn't move aside. If this is about the house, it's not. I studied him. For once, he wasn't holding anything. No folder, no documents, no performance. Just himself. And that made me more cautious. 5 minutes, I said. He nodded. I stepped back. He walked in slowly. Like he knew things had changed. Like he understood he didn't belong here the same way anymore. We sat across from each other in the living room. The same room he had tried to empty. The same room where everything had started. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said it. They're investigating me. I didn't react. I had expected that. Financial crimes? He added. Fraud, exploitation. His voice didn't rise. It didn't break. It just flattened. How far does it go? I asked. All of it. I nodded slowly. And Kevin? He's already pulled out. Of course he had. People like Kevin always did. What about Lauren? He hesitated. She's cooperating. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. She told them everything she knew. Did she? Yes. And what did she know? He looked down. Enough. Silence settled between us. Heavy. Real. You forged my signature, I said. It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, he said. That doesn't make it better. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. You mean before I noticed? He didn't answer, because that was the truth. I didn't start out trying to hurt you, he said quietly. That sentence almost got through. Almost. How did you start? I asked. He leaned back, ran a hand over his face. It was small. Of course it was. It always is. Alone, he continued. For Kevin's project. How much? 10,000. That matched the diary. And then the project stalled. Costs went up. He needed more. So you took more. I borrowed it. Without asking. I was going to put it back. You didn't. I couldn't. The words came out faster now. Less controlled. I thought if I could just keep it going, if I could just get through the next phase, it would recover. But it didn't. No. Silence again. Then I asked the question that mattered. So you decided to sell my house? His eyes flicked up. It would have solved everything. For you. For all of us. No, I said. Just for you. His jaw tightened. You don't understand the pressure. I understand enough. He leaned forward. Do you know what it's like to be responsible for something that's collapsing? Yes, I said quietly. I do. He blinked. You lost your father, I continued. I lost my husband. Silence. You think I don't understand pressure? I asked. He looked away. That's not the same. No, I said, it isn't. Because what I lost, I didn't choose. What he did, he did. On purpose. I made mistakes. He said. That's not what this is. What is it then? It's a pattern. He didn't respond. It's lying, taking, hiding, then doing it again. I was trying to fix it. You were trying to avoid being caught. That landed hard. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. And when that stopped working, I continued, you tried to take control of me. I was trying to protect you. No, I said. You were trying to control the situation. Another silence. Then, I'm going to lose everything, he said. There it was. The truth. Not dressed up, not softened, just real. My job, my license, my house. And whose fault is that he didn't answer? Not mine, I said. No, it was the first time he said it. Directly, clearly, without deflecting. I don't expect you to fix it, he added. Good, because I wouldn't, but I need you to understand. I do. He looked up. Surprised? I understand exactly what you did, I said, and I understand why. Then why? But that doesn't make it okay. That stopped him, because there was no argument left. I don't hate you, I said. That surprised him too. I'm angry, I continued. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. My voice stayed steady. But I don't hate you. His eyes filled slightly. For a moment, he looked like my son again. Not the man who had tried to take everything from me. Just my son. What happens now? He asked. I thought about that. Really thought about it. Now you deal with what you did. And us? I took a breath. That depends on what you do next. Silence. Longer this time. Then he nodded. Slowly. I understand. I wasn't sure if he did, but it was the first time he said it without trying to change anything, without trying to negotiate, without trying to control. He stood up, walked toward the door, then stopped. There's something else, he said. I waited. I didn't know about the trust. I almost smiled. I figured, if I had, you would have found another way. He didn't deny it, because that was the truth too. He opened the door, then hesitated. I'm sorry, he said. Not loudly, not dramatically, just simply. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a strategy. It sounded like a beginning. I didn't respond. Not yet, because some things take time. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Faster than Michael expected. Within a week, everything that had been quiet became official. Detectives contacted Susan. Then they contacted me. Not as a suspect, as a victim. I hated that word, but I didn't correct them, because for the first time, It wasn't just my word against his. It was documented, verified, real. 2 officers came to the house one afternoon, polite, professional, careful. They sat at the same table where Michael had once placed those photographs of evidence against me. Now the evidence had turned. "Mrs. Carter," one of them said, "we need to go over a few things with you." I nodded. Of course. They asked about the accounts, the transfers, the documents. I answered clearly, directly. No emotion, no hesitation, just facts. "Did you authorize these transactions?" the officer asked. "No." "Did you sign any documents granting permission?" I signed paperwork in the hospital. I believed it was medical. "Do you recognize this signature?" He slid a copy of the forged document across the table. I looked at it carefully. "It looks like mine," I said, "but I didn't knowingly sign this." He nodded. That mattered. Every detail mattered. When they left, I sat in silence for a long time, because now there was no turning back. Not for Michael, not for me. A few days later, Susan called again. "They've made an offer," she said. "What kind of offer?" "A plea agreement." I closed my eyes. Already, that was fast. "They have enough evidence." I wasn't surprised. "What does it mean?" I asked. "It means your son will admit to financial misconduct in exchange for reduced penalties." "Reduced how?" "No prison time most likely. Probation? Restitution?" "Restitution." The word sounded hollow. "You can't restore trust with a payment plan," I said. "No," she agreed. "But the law deals with money differently than people do?" I nodded slowly. "And Kevin, he's under investigation as well." "But your son is the primary party connected to your accounts." Of course he was. He had access, he had opportunity, and he had made the choice. "What about Lauren?" I asked. "She's cooperating fully." I let out a small breath. She always knew how to protect herself. "Yes," Susan said. "That's exactly what she's doing." The final meeting with Michael was scheduled at his attorney's office. Neutral ground, supervised, controlled. I almost didn't go, but I knew I needed to. Not for him, for me. When I walked into the room, he was already there, sitting at the table, hands folded, looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Something else. The weight of consequences had settled on him, and it showed. He looked up when I entered. "Mom." I didn't respond. I sat across from him. His attorney explained the agreement. Terms, conditions, numbers. It all sounded distant, abstract, because none of it touched the part that mattered. Finally, the attorney stopped talking. "Do you have any questions?" he asked me. I looked at Michael. "Do you understand what you're signing?" He nodded. "Yes." "What does it mean to you?" He hesitated, then said, "It means I take responsibility." I held his gaze. "For what?" "For everything." The room went quiet, because that was the first time he had said it like that. Not partial, not softened. Everything. "And after this?" I asked. "What happens after?" He looked down. "I don't know. Honest." Finally. "I lose my license," he added quietly. "I lose the house." I didn't respond. "He'll have to start over." That part mattered, because it meant he finally understood. Not just what he had done, but what it cost. "Do you expect me to help you?" I asked. He looked up quickly. "No." "Good. I don't," he repeated. Another pause. "I just wanted you to hear it from me." I nodded once. "I've heard it." His hands tightened slightly. "I know I can't fix this." "No," I said. "You can't. But I can try to be better." I studied him. Not the words, the way he said them. No urgency, no pressure, no expectation. Just a statement. "That's your responsibility," I said. "Yes, not mine, not anymore." When the meeting ended, he didn't follow me, didn't try to continue the conversation, didn't ask for anything. He just stayed seated as I walked out, and for the first time, that felt right. A week later, everything was finalized. The agreement was signed. The case was closed, at least legally. Michael was placed on probation, ordered to repay what he could, required to attend financial counseling, and stripped of the authority he had once taken without asking. It wasn't a dramatic ending. No courtroom confrontation, no shouting, no collapse. Just consequences. Quiet, permanent, real. I went home that evening, opened the front door, and stood in the living room, the same room where it had all started. The boxes were still there. Some opened, some not. I walked over slowly, picked one up, and set it down in the center of the room. Then I opened it. Inside were photographs, letters, pieces of a life that had almost been packed away, forgotten, sold. I picked up one photo, me and Thomas, standing in front of the house. Younger, smiling, certain. I placed it back on the shelf where it belonged. Not because I was restoring the past, but because I was reclaiming it. And this time, no one else would decide what stayed and what got packed away. The house felt different once everything was over. Not quieter, not emptier, clearer. Like something heavy had been removed, even though all the furniture was still in place. The boxes were still there too, stacked along the wall. Some half open, some untouched. For days, I walked past them. Not because I didn't want to open them, because I needed to be ready. Each one held something I had almost lost, and I didn't want to rush that. The first box I opened was the smallest. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Thomas's handwriting, my mother's handwriting, even a few from Michael when he was younger. I sat down and read one. Dear Mom, I got an A on my math test. His words were messy, uneven, but proud. I smiled despite myself. He had been so proud of small things back then. So honest. So certain about what was right. I placed the letter back carefully. Not because I was holding on to the past, because I was honoring it. The next box held photographs. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, vacations. Ordinary days that had become extraordinary simply because we had lived them. I didn't rush through them. I took my time, one by one, piece by piece, putting everything back where it belonged, not in the same way as before, but in a way that made sense now. A week later, I invited Patricia over. She stood in the doorway and looked around. You've been busy? Not in the same way as before, but in a way that made sense now. A week later, I invited Patricia over. She stood in the doorway and looked around. You've been busy? She said. I've been rebuilding. She nodded. Feels different. It is. We sat in the living room. No boxes, no tension. Just space. Real space. What's next? She asked. I thought about that. For the first time in a long time, the question didn't feel heavy. I don't know, I said. Good. I smiled slightly. Why is that good? Because it means you get to decide. She was right. That was the part I almost lost. Not the house, not the money, the choice. A few days later, I got a letter. Not from a lawyer, not from the court, from Michael. I held it in my hand for a long time before opening it. When I finally did, the words were simple. No excuses, no explanations, just honesty. I don't expect forgiveness. That was the first line. Good, because I wasn't ready to give it. I'm working to fix what I can. That mattered. Not because I deserve it, because it's my responsibility. I read that line twice, then a third time, At the bottom, one sentence stood out. I hope one day I can earn back even a small part of what I lost. Earn. Not ask, not expect. Earn. That was new. I folded the letter and set it aside, not because I didn't care, because I did. Enough to not rush the answer. A week later, I agreed to see him again. This time, it was my choice. We met at a small cafe. Public, neutral, safe. He was already there when I arrived, standing, nervous. That was new too. Hi, he said. Hi. We sat down, ordered coffee. For a moment, it felt like we were strangers, because in some ways, we were. I got your letter, I said. He nodded. I meant it, I know. That surprised him. I can tell the difference now, I added. He looked down briefly, then back up. I'm not asking for anything. I know. Silence. Then I've started counseling, he said. For what? For understanding why I did what I did? That mattered. Not the words, the action. I'm also working a different job, he added. What kind? Nothing impressive? That's not the point. He nodded. I know. Another pause. Then he said it. I don't expect things to go back to how they were. They won't. I just want a chance to do better. I looked at him carefully. Not the son I remembered. Not the man who stood in my living room with boxes. Someone in between, uncertain, trying. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. His shoulders dropped slightly. I understand, but I'm not closing the door either. He looked up quickly. Really? Yes. The word felt right. Not easy, but right. That depends on what you do, I continued. Not what you say. He nodded. I will. We finished our coffee in quiet conversation. Small things, simple things. Not the past. Not the damage. Just neutral ground. And for the first time, that felt like enough. When I got home, I walked into the spare room. The last room I hadn't finished. The one where the cedar chest still sat. I opened it slowly, the lining still loose. The place where I had found the diary. I took the blue diary out and held it in my hands. This small thing had changed everything. Not because it was loud, not because it forced anything, because it told the truth, quietly, patiently, at the right time. I looked around the room. Then I made a decision. Not about the past, about the future. A month later, the room was transformed, not into a storage space, not into a reminder of what happened, into something new, a small meeting space, a place where other women could come, talk, learn, ask questions about money, about control, about boundaries. Patricia helped me set it up. Susan spoke at the first meeting. Emily came too. We didn't call it anything official, just a gathering, a conversation, a place to be heard, and at the center of the room I placed the diary. Inside a small glass case. Not hidden anymore, not forgotten. A reminder that sometimes the smallest voice can protect you when everything else fails. That evening, I sat on the porch. The maple tree Thomas planted had grown taller, stronger, just like he said it would. The wind moved through the leaves, soft, steady. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like my life had been packed away. I felt like it had been opened again, on my terms. There is something no one really prepares you for not aging, not loss, not even loneliness. It's the moment when someone you love starts making decisions for you and calls it love. What I learned through all of this is simple, but it took me 72 years to fully understand. Growing older does not mean giving up your voice. It does not mean handing over your choices, your memories, or your dignity, no matter how reasonable it may sound. Control often hides behind kindness. Manipulation often sounds like concern. And the people closest to us are sometimes the ones we hesitate the most to question. But silence is where we lose everything. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to check your own accounts. You are allowed to say no even to your own child. Especto say no even to your own child. Especially when something doesn't feel right. And forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about pretending nothing happened. It is not about erasing consequences. It is about choosing peace without surrendering truth. You can leave the door openly when something doesn't feel right. And forgiveness? Forgiveness is not about pretending nothing happened. It is not about erasing consequences. It is about choosing peace without surrendering truth. You can leave the door open without letting someone walk back in the same way they left. And most importantly, it is never too late to rebuild your life. Not at 60, not at 70, not even at 80, because as long as you can still decide for yourself, you are still in control of your story. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have trusted your son or followed your instincts? Do you think Michael deserves a second chance, or some things can never be repaired? I would truly like to hear your thoughts. Please share your experience or opinion in the comments, especially if you've ever faced something similar. And if this story meant something to you, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are more stories like this stories that remind us we are not alone. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment.